Okay. Kumlan Abak Gemara. We are up to today the Lamed Amid Aleph. The Gemara says, this is next Thursday's Gemara. The Mishnah is going to give us now a number of examples of cases, things that we learned in the first paragraph, but now it's going to give you the scenarios of how it works. So Mishnah number one, and as we say, Halt Cup. Mishnah number one. It's just painting different pictures there of what happened. Number one. Three brothers, Reuben, Shimon, Levi. Every case would be the same. Reuben, Shimon, Levi. Reuben and Shimon married to two sisters. The Echad Nasa Nachar. Levi is married to an unrelated woman. Meis Echad Nebali Achais. Let's say Reuben died. The Konas, who married her, she was available now to Shimon Levi, but obviously Shimon couldn't marry her because it's his sister's wife. So the Konas Nasa Nachris es Ishtay. So Levi married Reuben's wife. Fair enough. And then Levi dies. Now, Reuben's wife that was married to Levi cannot go now to Shimon because her sister. She's scot-free. She's the Erva, and Vishniya Mishum Tzarasa. And then Levi's other wife, or his real wife, is now the Tzara of an Erva, and therefore she also goes out scot-free. What about Osa B'Maimer? What about, let's say, if Levi didn't marry Reuben's wife, he just went ahead and did the overture of a Maimer, gave a Kedusha, and then Mason died. Mason died. So again, she cannot marry Shimon. Levi's no longer around. But what happens to Levi's co-wife? She's now the co-wife of a Maimer, of an Erva. Mehatreda, really nothing happened. So Mehatreda, she's still Mechuyev and Yibum. But Midrabanan, because it looks like it's Levi's wife and she's the Tzar of an Erva, so it's Chalitza and no Yibum. Says the Gemara, from this mission, it seems clear that only because he made a Maimer, that's why we don't prevent of getting married. If we do, let's say Levi did nothing. Reuben died and Levi did nothing, and then Levi died. Now Levi's wife could marry Shimon. They were already bound together. Reuben's wife was already bonded to Levi. So you wouldn't know. Maybe learn out. Ain't Zika. Remember, we had a big argument. This mission proves that there is no such thing as a bond. But even though he's only a surviving brother, because Shimon obviously can't marry. Doesn't matter. There's no Zika, and that's why without the Maimer, nothing happens. Now bear that in mind. To the bottom of the page, we're going to change that. But that's what Rav Nachman said. Next case. Next mission. Show you three brothers. Reuben married two sisters. Levi was married to an unrelated woman. Let's say Levi died. The Konas Echad. So Levi this time died. The Konas Echad Balachayis. So Shimon, let's say, he has his main wife, who's a sister, and he added now this Tzara. He added now Levi's wife to his wife, the Maze, and then Shimon died. So Shimon's wife herself is a sister of Reuben's wife, obviously can't marry. And now the co-wife, which originally was Levi's wife, and now moved on to Shimon, Mishum Tzarasa, she's a Tzara of an era. But also by Maimer, let's say if Shimon didn't marry Levi's wife, just made a Maimer to Levi's wife, Umeis, and then Shimon died. Noch is Chaletzes, and same as before. But the Chaletzes is Abemes, because really she's not yet married to Shimon, so therefore she has a mitzvah of Yibum. On the other hand, it looks like she's already married to Shimon, and she's the Tzara of an Erva, so therefore just Chalitza. Says it's the same case as before. Hainu Hach, it's exactly the same principle. In fact, even less so. Hashtam, Mahasam, Dachis, Isha, Habit, Saru, Nachis. Madach, the case over there, that Levi's main wife cannot go through Yibum because she was a tzara of an Erva who joined them later. I'm going to just say, she cannot marry. Here the other way around. Here the main wife was the Erva. Shimon was married to the sister, and the Levi's wife just joined. Like Koshkin, surely that there's no can't get married. So we say, and she because she's a secondary to the main wife, which is the Erva. So surely she cannot marry. So you must be right. First, he learned the Chazi. In fact, the Tana first thought that in this case over here, where the main wife is the Tzara and the Erva just joined, perhaps we should disassociate the Erva and say the main wife should go ahead through the Yibum. And he thought actually be Mutter. The Shaya permitted. Then so then he changed his mind. This is the mission on top of the page, and he tried to Asa. Because he enjoyed it so much that he came up with the new halacha. After he decided to make that mission first, but the second mission he left already in place. So Mishnah is other He learned it, he left it there. Just he changed the order. Case number 3. Reuben married two sisters. And again, Levi married an unrelated woman. Reuben died, let's say, but v'konas noshenoches ishte. And what happened was that the one that Levi, who was married to an unrelated woman, is the one who married Reuben's wife. But this time, what the difference was that Mesa Ishto Shashem. So what happened was Levi married Reuben's wife. So now Levi has his own wife, who's unrelated, and he married Reuben's wife. Now Reuben, when he died, Reuben's wife could not have married Shimon because his sister was married. But what happened after she married Levi? Her sister's no longer married to. Her sister died, no longer married to Shimon. So now, when Levi dies, the question is, can she now marry Shimon? Because Shimon is no longer married to his sister. We're up to the Mishnah of Lamed of the middle, the third Mishnah on the page. So three brothers, there's two of them were married to sisters, and the third one was married. Levi was married to someone unrelated, and then Reuben died, so Levi married Reuben's sister because Shimon couldn't. And now Shimon's wife, who was Reuben's wife, original Reuben's wife, now is Levi's wife, sister died, out of the equation. But when Reuben died, this woman Leah couldn't marry Shimon. But now that Rachel, Shimon's wife, died, can Leah now go to Shimon, or do we say Leah, since she already had an Isser to Shimon, that Isser still remains? And Levi died. They are Asr forever. What do you mean? Because when Reuben died, Leah could not marry Shimon. So even though now she moved over to Levi and Levi died, she doesn't move back to Shimon, even though her sister's dead, because once the Nisra is there, it doesn't leave. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yonah says name it out, but he states the principle. Any Yevama, when her husband died, for that moment, they couldn't get married to some of the brothers. We treat it as if they had children, and therefore you're not allowed to marry your brother's wife if they had children. And that Issa remains forever. Ba'asur remains forever. So let's say if a brother and wife had children, then a few years later they pass away, the other brothers can marry her. Once you're not a Yevama, you're not a Yevama. Says the Gemara, my Kamashma. What's up adding? It says that not Mishnah. Tanin says not Mishnah. Harezu Asura, that Levi's wife, who was originally Reuben's wife, cannot marry Shimon. Aylamis, Hovenesel Shoacha. Once it's off, us, it's us. The Gemara, no. There's a difference. I would have thought I would have thought in this case over here, Reuben died. The whole time that she was a woman that was free, she couldn't marry Shimon. It's only after she married Levi that Shimon's wife died. So, okay, she was ushered the whole time when she was free. That's why it doesn't become permitted again. But what about if, let's say, Reuben died, she couldn't marry Shimon, and a month later, her sister dies? Can she now marry Shimon because she's still a free woman, and within the time of her Issa, it turned into a heter? Maybe things change, and that's Rav's Chiddush. I would have thought maybe now it's mutter because she's still a free woman, and now the problem is gone. No, it's not gone. So even that we already know. Where do we know that from? Because we learned previously, we're going to learn later on, two brothers. And the Suyin is Reuben Shimon married to two sisters. Base Echemhem, one of them died, Shimon died. The Achakach Mesa Ishto Shasheni. Let's say Shimon died. Right? So the woman cannot marry Reuben. Obviously, because her sister's married to Reuben. But then Reuben's wife passed away. Her sister who was married to Reuben passed away. Can Reuben now marry Shimon's wife? It's also forever. Even though she's a free woman and now she changed from Isa to Heta, it's too late. Once it's also forever. So what's Rav telling us? What's the difference? Says the Gemara. That's very different. I would have thought that's different. You know why? There's only two brothers, and once Shimon died, the only brother, the prospective Yavam, is Reuben. But you can't marry Yavam, so you've basically extinguished the Yavam in this household. Once you extinguish it, how does it get resurrected? Completely extinguished. In our case here, that it wasn't extinguished because you had Levi around. When Reuben died, you could have married Levi, and eventually she did. So therefore, her Yibum was never extinguished. So if she was in waiting, she didn't marry Levi, she was in waiting, and then her sister died by Shimon, maybe in this case, it converts to Heta because the Yibum mitzvah is hanging over her head. The question is only when is she going to marry Levi? So now that Shimon became available, and because her sister died, maybe things changed. And that's Rav's Chiddush. It doesn't. Since she's suitable for Levi, maybe she's also suitable for Shimon. That's not so. Okay, next case. Case number 4. Mishnah on the bottom of the page. Three brothers. Three brothers. Reuben Shimon married to Leah and Rachel. The Echad also not Levi. He's married to somebody else, to Sarah. Giddush Echad. Now this case is different. Nobody died. He divorced. Giddush Echad Balachai says Ishtar. Let's say Reuben divorced his wife, who was the sister of Shimon, and then Reuben died. Sorry, is Levi died. The one who was married to an unrelated woman died. So you have Reuben, Shimon, Levi. Reuben, Shimon married to two sisters. Reuben divorced one of the sisters. Reuben divorced Leah. And then Levi died. So Reuben now married Levi's wife. So is she considered the co-wife of an erva? No, because when she entered the marriage, the erva was already divorced, no longer tagged to it. In the contra megadash v'mei zuli shama, this is what we say. The kulon shemeish the garsha, that if the erva died or was divorced, so the same with the co-wife is permitted. So it sounds in mission, the only reason why the co-wife permitted is because when she married Reuben, the other sister was gone. The erva was gone. She was divorced. Sounds like if they lived together, overlap for a while, but Reuben divorced her before he died, it would have been a problem. And we had that issue before, and we'll come back to it again. When does the Yibum count? As soon as they get married, or when Reuben passes away? If the Yibum starts when Reuben passes away, which we pass in halacha, when Reuben passes away, then who cares if they were married together, the co-wife and erva? As long as when Reuben passed away, the erva was divorced, then the co-wife has the mitzvah of Yibum. But from this mission, it sounds like that doesn't work that way. It sounds like if they even live together for a day, she's considered the co-wife of an erva, even though she's gone. So the Gemara says, time, it seems to me the only reason is the Gidin Rakamesh, because she was divorced and then he died. But let's say if Levi would have died, let's say, so if Levi would have died and she was tied already to Reuben, even Reuben didn't marry her. She already had a bond to Reuben while he was still married to the erva, then Asuda would be forbidden. Even though he divorced Leah later, it would be forbidden. Why? This mission tells us, yes, Zika, even though the two brothers, he couldn't marry Reuben or Shimon, nevertheless, there's a bond. It's as if she was married to Reuben, and therefore it overlapped her marriage to Reuben, overlapped with the erva. And even though the erva was divorced before Reuben died, she's the co-wife of an erva, because we look at the time when they get married, according to this Mishnah. Or Rav Ashi, Kasha Nachman, we're by the top of the page where Rav Nachman brought proof that on the contrary, that we said that the only reason of it because he made an overture, he made a maimer, because he made a maimer, therefore we say he can only do chalitza. So we see that without the maimer, there wouldn't have been no ties. Rashi said, no. The reason why the Mishnah, I believe, the reason why the Mishnah mentioned Maimed for a different reason altogether. Not to tell you, but no Maimed, there's no bond. Of course, there's a bond. The Chiddush is that even though they gave a Maimed, we learned before, Beishamai says a Maimed is like Kedushin, it cements their relationship. I want you to know that it does not cement any relationship, and therefore we don't let them get married. You have to do a Chalitza. Who did never get love if we didn't do a Maimed? Noch is mechas, Chaltzi, Yibum, my lady's wife can only do Chalitza and not Yibum. So why do you mention Maimah? But how do you tell you Maimah? La Fuke Beshamai. This is to negate Beshamai's opinion. He said Maimah Koine Kinyan Gover. According to Beshamai, that the Maimah makes a complete Kinyan, and therefore the lady's wife doesn't need chalitza because she is the co-wife. Just by receiving the Maimah, she became the co-wife of an erva. And we say no, you still need chalitza. They're like Kamash Long Beshamai. Says the Gemara, okay, but I'm not on top of the page. You want to prove that there is no bond. How is he learning the Mishnah we just learned right now? Kasha, the Ravashi, it's clear from here that there is a bond. That if what? That if that the Mishnah says that the only reason why she's not considered the co-wife of an erva is because Reuben divorced her before Levi died. But if Levi would have died first, it's already bonded to Reuben, and they would be considered co-wives. Doesn't that prove that there is zika? Or I'm not Makasha Ravashi. What about Nachman? How could he say that there is no zika when you see right here there is? If you can tell me who I didn't really don't learn that way in the Mishnah, really makes no difference. According to Mishnah, the Mishnah wasn't very pedantic. That even if, let's say, Levi died first and there was a bond to Reuben, it doesn't matter. She's not considered a co-wife. If you want to know the way the Mishnah wasn't really particular, so tell me. So why does the Mishnah conclude Zuhi? This is the paradigm. This is the true example of someone who's divorced that the co-wife has a mitzvah of Yibum. What do you mean Zuhi and not what? Lamudimai, what's it coming to exclude? So the Gemara says, no, it's coming to exclude. It's not coming to exclude. I'll tell you what's coming to exclude. Lemute, to exclude Konas. If Reuben actually married her, if Reuben, this is what Nachman says, coming to exclude a case if Reuben actually married Levi's wife and they overlapped for a week, an hour with the sister, with Leah, the sister of Shimon's wife, then there's no longer any Yibum. She's the co-wife, even though he divorced Leah 5 minutes later, no longer co-wife of an erva. And sorry, she is considered the co-wife of an erva, therefore there's no Yibum anymore. So the Gemara, this makes sense if you hold, like Rabbi Yevamos says that this Mishnah here holds, that it's not, we don't focus on the moment Reuben died to see who his wives were. We focus while Reuben was alive and he married women, who were his wives. Then it makes sense that even though when Reuben died, the Leah was no longer there, the fact is that they lived together in the room an hour together, she's a co-wife of a tzara. He actually said break the two missions apart. Misha Shanazu, each mission is different. There's an argument tonight. But high tanda of a Misa Mapelas, and Rabbi Yibum explained one tanda hold that when does Yibum start? When Reuben dies. But high tanda of a Nisuna Rishayim Apilim, and when, and the other one says no. While Reuben was alive, if he married two women, one was an erva, one was a tzara, that's it. She's labeled a tzara of an erva forevermore. So this is what our mission is coming to tell you, to tell you only they never married, because there's no bond. Or because if Reuben actually married Levi's wife, and an hour later he divorces Leah, she's considered the co-wife of an erva. But if, let's say, Rav Nachman held like Rav Amri says that it does, even if they married, who cares? Even they overlap, who cares? What the focus is when Reuben died. And the mission is just building up the steps that even if they married, as long as when Reuben died, they were not, if they're both the wives of Reuben, what's that coming to exclude? Al Korcha Kirabim is really right. Rav Nachman must hold Kirabim that the mission is coming to tell you that as long as if Reuben did marry them, I don't care if when Reuben died, Leah was already gone. If Reuben married them, they were co-wife, she's considered a tzara of an erva. Ula Rava, according to Rava, who holds that the only focus is the time of death. Hanichi, so look, you hold like Ravashi, what's really coming to exclude? Mes beloy Giddish. What happens? He didn't divorce her and he died and they're both married together. Hold 1 second, please. Hello. Okay, 1 second. What is? Red plumber. What? Red plumber. The plumber. Sorry, the plumber just came a little bit early. Okay. So, it must be that he holds like Ravashi, that he must hold like Ravashi, that there is Zika, and that's what the Mishnah is talking about. That there is a bond already. Says the Mishnah, the Kulon, Shahaya Behen Kedushin. Says the Mishnah, all of these cases, these 15 cases in the first Mishnah of Masechta, which are the 15 Arayos, Shahaya Behen Kiddushin or Gerushin B'Safik. What happens if the erva, in other words, they were married to, one of the brothers married to somebody, and then he went ahead and proposed to a woman that would have been an erva to the other brother, let's say Shimon's daughter, but it's questionable whether the Kiddushin was a valid Kiddushin. And if the Kiddushin is a valid Kiddushin, then now, let's say Reuben gave Kiddushin to Shimon's daughter, or Shimon's wife's sister. Let's say Shimon's wife's sister. If it's a valid Kiddushin, then Reuben's wife is no longer, first wife is no longer able to marry Shimon if Reuben dies. But if it's not a valid Kiddushin, then she's still a Yevama. It's questionable. So the chazaka is that she was supposed to be a Yevama, and now something she put a span in the works. He put a Safek Kiddushin. We'll see later what the Safek is. I gave she that right now she's a co-wife or never. There's no Yibum at all. But the Safek if he divorced his wife or not. How the Elo had sodas, what do these sodas do? We don't know what to do with them. Should they get to go through Yibum or not? It's Chotzelim is Yamas. So do the Chalitza without the Yibum part. Kate's at Safek Kedushin. What do you mean a Safek Kedushin? Zara Kedushin. They were standing out in the middle of the street, and your 4 Amos around you are considered yours. He threw Kedushin at her, and Safek Kar of Loi, Safek Kar of Loi. We're not sure if it's closer to him or closer to her. They were overlapping. We're not sure who's closer to her. That's called a Safek Kedushin. We don't know if she's married to Reuben or not married to Reuben. Safek Gedushin. What's an example of a Safek Gedushin? Now the Gemara could have given the same example, but the Mishnah doesn't, and that's what the Gemara's discussion will be. Why not? Kosavik Savyodei, 3 examples: a get that is questionable of the get. We say the Chatchil don't use this get, but if he did, okay. So let's say he wrote a get. Kosavik Savyodei, the guy, the husband, wrote it in his own handwriting. The ain't all of Edim, but there are no witnesses at all. Or yes, all of Edim. Now we're witnesses. The ain't Bisman, but there's no date, and we don't like a get without a date. And we'll see the Gemara later. Why not? Yes, Bisman, there is a date, but the ain't Be'leidech is only one single date. All of the examples are all Safek Gerushin, are all Safek Gedushin. And it's questionable to get, and therefore, because it's questionable to get, in all of these cases, we say, give chalitza, but there's no yibum whatsoever. because we don't want you to go ahead and say, well, but the ever the get is all right, so therefore let her go get married, because people don't understand, and they think the get is not valid, and yet we're saying the people think, oh, the tzar whatever can go ahead and do Yibum. Says the Gemara, the obvious questions. How come when it comes to Gittin, we look for other examples of a suffix? Vila begerishin, suffix, card of light, suffix, card of law, like Tani. But it comes to Gittin, a suffix is closer to him, a suffix closer to her. Doesn't mention. Why don't we just use the same example? You threw a get at her. You don't know if it's close to her, close to him, close to her. She's divorced, close to him. It's not divorced. My time, why not? So Rabbah is going to employ a rule that we have, and the rule is whenever you don't know, if you're in doubt what actually happened, we say, you know what? Leave things status quo. It's called the chazaka. Leave things status quo. So in the case of if there's a suffix gerushin, that means that Reuben was married to Leah, she was married to Rachel, and Reuben also had another wife. So at this stage, the tzara of the Arab has no mitzvah yibum. Now there's a suffix whether she's divorced, the suffix whether we don't know. So leave it as a status quo. What's the status quo? That there is a mitzvah of yibum. In the case of suffix kedushin, it's the other way around. The status quo is that she that there is a mitzvah yibum. By gerushin, the status quo is that there's no mitzvah yibum. She's the tzara of an erva. By a case where she married, where he gave a suffix kedushin to an erva, the status quo is that she has a mitzvah yibum. And the question now is the things turn around because he also married the tzara or not. So each thing we leave with the status quo. The Gemara explains. Each of the chesed had to sugar medis when it comes to a gerushin, the chazaki is by gerushin. The chazaki is that she cannot marry. She's not a yibum because her co-wife is an erva. Now, suffix at the balo Yisra, you want to come along because of a suffix and change things around. Maybe she's divorced, and therefore maybe she has a mitzvah yibum. Al tasren a suffix. You don't do it based on a suffix. On the other hand, these three cases in the Mishnah about a get, you wrote with a single witness, no time, no that. The get actually is a good get. It's not so much a suffix. It's only because people are not aware that it's a valid get. So it's different. It's not a suffix. Saying on further, Abaye will not let him go. So Abaye says to him, and he won't let him go to the end. Abaye says to him, following that logic, the Kedushinami. In the case of Kedushin, what's the status quo? The status quo is that she has to marry a brother. There's a mitzvah yibum. Now the question is whether he also married the erva. So leave things status quo, that she has a mitzvah yibum. Why only give chalitza? She has to marry the Yavam, that's the status quo. So now you say, no, only get chalitza, no yibum. Why not? Leave it status quo. You shouldn't ban her from marrying her brother-in-law. Leave things chazaka, status quo. So he answered back, Hasam l'chumra. So he said, look, we're going to be machmer. You still have to go through chalitza, but we're not going to let her marry. We want to be machmer. Says the Rabbi, what kind of chumra is that? If you're not going to let her get married, what are people going to think? What are people going to think? People are going to think the reason why the people think the reason why you're not letting her get married is because the kedushin, the suffix kedushin you gave to the erva is probably good kedushin. They're going to assume that the erva now is married to Reuben. That's what they're going to assume. That's why the wife cannot go ahead and marry Yibum. So they're going to assume that he's married to Reuben. So you know what kind of problems will arise from that? Reuben himself will go ahead and give kedushin to a sister, let's say, of his wife Leah, the third sister there, kedushin vadai, and give definitely kedushin, and he'll think to himself, I'm not really married to the second. I'm really married to the first wife, so it doesn't matter. I'm playing a game. I gave her kedushin, but in reality, the first wife is only a suffix kedushin, and the second wife might be your wife. A stranger will come along, or a stranger will come along and give kedushin to her, and we'll think nothing happened. We'll think of what? People will think, since you're not allowing the co-wife to marry Shimon, they'll think, must be because Reuben is married to this woman. And they're going to ignore the second kedushin. Amri the kama kedushin or the basla kedushin. Everybody's going to assume that the second kedushin is not kedushin, that Reuben is married. That's a chumrah. You're being machman, not letting it become a yavam, but the interpretation will be because the erva is really married. And look at the kind of trouble you're going to come out of that. So Rabbi says, no, I'm not worried. The fact is, keeping the komatzechet chalitza, because you're telling her, you're not saying to the co-wife, you're free, because then everybody would realize, because he's married to Reuben is married to the Ever. Because we say to the co-wife, you still need chalitza, what does that tell everybody? That it's a suffix, or they tell everybody that she is not really married to Reuben and therefore won't have these problems. Everyone realize. So on the one hand, you can't be miyabim. On the other hand, you make a chalitza. What does that tell us? That it's a suffix. We don't know her position, so we're not going to treat lightly the fact that Reuben gave kedushin to Leah. So So by Gedushin also, by Gedushin, you're telling me, the way you're telling me right now is by Gedushin, you leave status quo, that if she was married, she was a co-wife of this woman before he gave her divorce, co-wife of Leah, and therefore what do you tell me about? That she's totally free. She's totally free. So why don't we also say they give a chalitza? Since we don't know whether it's divorced or not divorced, we don't know if she's still the co-wife of Erev or not. We should say, okay, you cannot marry the Yibum because you're a co-wife of, maybe you're a co-wife in Erev, but at least give chalitza. No mistakes will arise from that because everyone will know. We don't let her marry. I mean, we assume that she's a co-wife of an Arab. On the other hand, we tell her to give a chalitza. That tells us we're not sure if the get was a valid get or not. Same thing. So Rabbi says that's so simple. Because in that case over there, till now, everybody thought that she's going to marry the brother-in-law. And if you're going to tell her, go ahead and get a chalitza, what is she going to think? What's everybody going to think? Oh, she's still the brother-in-law. And she'll have the mitzvah yibum. And they'll think that she can go get married. Problems will arise because she can't. Because maybe it wasn't a divorce. And maybe she's the co-wife of Nerva. There's an Issachar here. So therefore, we don't want to start trouble. No, so he asked the question about Yochanan here too. If you tell her to go get chalitza, if you tell the one that there's a subject kedusha or not, we say, look, technically you can marry Shimon, but maybe you're the co-wife of an Erev, so just get chalitza. Why aren't you worried that you will marry Shimon? She'll marry, and maybe she shouldn't because she's the co-wife of an Erev. Says the Gemara. We don't care. Let's say a mistake happens and she marries Shimon, thinking that the co-wife never got married to Reuven, the Erev never got married to Reuven, and I can marry Shimon. So she married Shimon. It doesn't matter. You know why? Because at the end of the day, the Chazaka tells us that she's allowed to marry Shimon. The Chazaka says, till now, you were going to marry Shimon. Now suddenly Kedushin happened. We're not sure. Is it a Kedushin or not Kedushin? The law is, whatever is a suffix, go to Chazaka. Chazaka says you can marry. Go pause over here.